We have more comfort now than ever before, but anxiety feels more common. The philosopher Seneca noticed something. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. And he had a radical solution. We have to toughen our minds against hardship, and we do that by seeking it out. That's the art of voluntary discomfort. It's a Stoic practice. It works like a psychological inoculation. This isn't about pointless suffering. It's strategic training. You embrace manageable challenges willingly. You build resilience, and then life's inevitable hardships feel smaller. This video will go through the principles, the practices, how to turn this ancient idea into modern, actionable wisdom. You'll learn to systematically strengthen your mind against fear, against frustration, against misfortune. Sudden comfort, one you suspect might be making you softer. The Stoics saw life as a training ground, something you enter on purpose. An athlete doesn't wait for the game to start training. They're in the gym for months. So when the game comes, their body knows what to do. The Stoics applied that to the mind, to character. They called it askesis. It wasn't about punishment. It was a system, a method to strengthen your will, your judgment, your capacity for calm. The goal was to build what we'd now call antifragility. That's when something doesn't just survive a shock. It gets better because of it. A bone gets stronger under stress. A muscle grows. Inner resilience works the same way. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He'd remind himself to find the strength inside, to turn an obstacle into fuel. The thing blocking your path could become the path, but how do you start? In a world of constant convenience, you start by noticing the small comforts, the ones we take for granted, the ones that might be making us softer, like perfect temperature control. We live at 70 degrees, never too hot, never too cold. Our bodies never adapt. A simple practice could be a cooler shower for the last 30 seconds. Or skipping a meal, not from neglect, as a choice, to feel mild hunger and see you're okay. The point is a small, controlled stressor, to prove discomfort isn't an emergency. It's just a sensation, and by facing it willingly, you reclaim a piece of your autonomy. So a question for the week: what's one small, comfortable habit in your routine? One you could intentionally disrupt. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It just needs to be a choice. That choice is the first rep in the gymnasium of your mind. When you choose discomfort, you're trying to control something. That's the question. What's actually in your control? The Stoics had this line. They split everything in two. On one side, what's up to us, our opinions, our impulses, what we want, what we avoid. On the other side, what's not up to us, our body, our possessions. What people think of us, our job, what other people do. Epictetus started his whole book with that. Some things are in our power, he said, some things aren't. And this choice, this voluntary discomfort, it's not about controlling the world outside. You can't control the shower temperature by thinking. You can't control feeling hungry. Those are sensations. They happen in the body. The body isn't fully yours to command. What you're trying to control is your judgment about those sensations. Is the cold water bad? Is this hunger an emergency? Is this small thing enough to ruin my mood? The practice is like a lab, a small, safe lab for your inner world. You set up a scenario. The outcome outside doesn't matter. All that matters is what happens inside. Take a modern example. You decide to listen to a political opinion you really disagree with. The goal isn't to change the other person's mind. That's not up to you. The goal isn't to like it. The goal is to sit there, to sit with the storm it kicks up. The urge to argue, the frustration, and to choose not to let that storm decide what you do. You're practicing command over your own judgment. You see the desire to lash out and you pick a different path. In that low-stakes moment, you're building a muscle, a mental muscle for a high-stakes talk with someone you love. Or for hearing hard feedback at work. The thing you're inoculating yourself against isn't the other person's opinion. It's your own reaction, your automatic anger. So think of something recent, something that irritated you. Maybe someone cut you off in traffic, or a coworker made a dismissive remark. Before you react, ask one question. What part of my reaction is actually in my control? You can't control the other driver. You can't take back your colleague's words. Those things are on the other side of the line. What's up to you is your judgment about it, your decision to take a breath instead of laying on the horn, your choice to answer with curiosity, not defensiveness. That's the real terrain, the ground of voluntary discomfort. We're not trying to stop feeling, we're training to become sovereign over our response. The Stoics would actually invite trouble into their imagination. They called it the Premeditation of Adversities. It sounds grim, but it's not pessimism. It's mental training, a strategic rehearsal, like a fire drill. You don't do a fire drill because you want a fire. You do it so if the alarm sounds, your body knows what to do. Panic gets replaced by procedure. This is a fire drill for your emotions. Seneca wrote about this. He told friends to set aside days to practice poverty. Wear simple clothes, eat plain food, and mentally rehearse loss. Tell yourself, the fortune you count on today might not be here tomorrow. That friend, that possession, that position, none of it is promised. This isn't to make you live in fear. It's the opposite. By visiting these thoughts calmly, you drain them of their shocking power. You inoculate your mind against the panic of the unexpected. The goal is to separate the event from the catastrophic story we attach to it. Losing a job is difficult. The story we tell is often, I'm a failure, my life is over. Premeditation lets you examine the event alone. Okay, if I lost my job, what would I actually do? What's the first step? Who could I talk to? You move from dread to practical consideration. You realize you have agency even then. In a modern sense, you might spend 5 minutes visualizing a hard conversation. See yourself staying calm if the other person gets upset. Hear yourself speaking clearly, feel your breath steady. You're not manifesting a fight, you're building a neural pathway for composure or your daily drive. Instead of just hoping for green lights, briefly consider, what if there's a major delay? What if the car won't start? Having a simple backup plan, knowing you could call for a ride, doesn't make the delay more likely. It makes your anxiety less powerful. So here's a prompt. What's one future challenge you're avoiding thinking about? A hard talk, a financial worry, a professional risk. Don't dwell for hours, but give it 5 minutes of calm, strategic visualization today. Don't just picture the problem. Picture yourself navigating through it with clarity. This practice doesn't attract misfortune, it builds a fortress of calm, so no matter what the world brings, you've already visited that room in your mind, and you know the way out. Stoicism has this idea of practicing having less. It's a way to cultivate contentment, not deprivation for its own sake, but a strategic weakening of desire. When we're surrounded by comfort, our sense of what we need expands. The baseline for normal keeps creeping higher. A mild inconvenience starts to feel like a crisis. So the practice is a deliberate reset, a periodic return to a simpler state, to prove to yourself your happiness isn't held hostage by external things. You go without a luxury, a rich food, a source of constant entertainment, and in that space you make a discovery. You are still you, you're still okay. You might even feel clearer, lighter, more in control. The Roman teacher Musonius Rufus spoke to this. He said simple food and hard work weren't signs of a lesser life. They were tools for building a stronger character. Luxury makes the body weak and the soul soft, but facing hardship with intention makes us self-reliant. Tough, the goal is to break that automatic link between wanting something and feeling you must have it to be happy. It's like if you only drink sweetened beverages. Plain water starts to taste bland, unsatisfying, but if you abstain from sugar for a while, your taste buds reset, water becomes refreshing, delicious on its own. Your appreciation is restored. The same is true for how we experience daily life. A practical start could be a digital Sabbath, one day a week or even a few hours. You intentionally disconnect from non-essential screens, no scrolling, no streaming, no constant notifications. The first urge will be to reach for your phone. That urge is the exact muscle you're exercising, the muscle of saying not right now. You sit with the quiet, you pick up a book, you go for a walk without a podcast. You remember you can be entertained by your own thoughts, by the world right in front of you. Another is a simple meal day, one day where you choose the most basic, nourishing foods. A bowl of rice and beans, some steamed vegetables. You eat it mindfully, not as a punishment but as an experiment. You observe the story your mind tells you. Is it complaining? Is it bored? And you observe the meal still nourishes your body. The comfort you miss is largely a story, a habit of expectation. So here's a direct challenge. For the next 24 hours, choose one common comfort to intentionally forego. It could be that second cup of coffee, or the habit of turning on the television as background noise, or using the elevator instead of the stairs. Don't make a grand show of it. Do it quietly as a private exercise. Pay attention not to what you're missing, but to what you discover in its place. That space, that slight friction, is where you meet a more resilient version of yourself. Your body's protests are like an untrained voice. Voluntary discomfort is the daily practice that strengthens your command over it. We tend to treat every physical signal as an urgent command. A chill means find a sweater. Hunger means grab a snack. Tiredness means we need to stop. But what if you could hear those signals without immediately obeying them? Separate the sensation from the demand for relief. That's the training ground. The goal isn't to punish the body. It's not to prove how tough you are. It's to observe the raw data of sensation without the story of suffering your mind layers on top. You prove to yourself in a direct and physical way that discomfort is survivable. It's a passing state, not a permanent condition. The Stoic Cato the Younger was famous for this. He wore simple, outdated clothing in an era of Roman opulence. He walked bareheaded in both sun and rain. He ate plain food. He trained his body to endure hardship. For him, this wasn't about showing off. It was a daily demonstration. His virtue, his inner character, was not dependent on physical ease. He was building a mind that could not be shaken by external conditions. By willingly embracing what others avoided, he inoculated himself against the fear of loss. He knew from constant practice that he would be fine with less. A modern application is cold exposure, a 30-second blast of cold water at the end of your shower. The initial shock is pure sensation. Your mind's first job is to scream about how terrible this is. Your second job, the one you're training for, is to simply observe, to feel the cold on your skin, the quickening of your breath, and to choose to stay. For just half a minute, you are not ignoring the body. You are listening to it closely, but you are the one deciding what happens next. The same principle applies to intermittent fasting. Skipping a single meal safely and with intention lets you observe hunger as a biological signal rather than an emergency. You notice the hollow feeling, the thoughts of food, and you realize you can continue your work, your conversation, your life without immediately answering that call. Even something as simple as choosing to sit on the floor instead of a cushioned chair. For a short while, it introduces a mild, instructive friction. Your body will complain about the hardness. Your mind gets to practice responding with, "I hear you, and we are staying here a little longer." So here's a question to sit with. What minor physical complaint do you usually rush to soothe? A slight chill, a bit of stiffness from sitting, a dry throat, a growling stomach before lunch. Could you sit with that sensation for just 10 minutes longer than you normally would? Don't make it a test of endurance. Make it an experiment in awareness. Set a timer. For those 10 minutes, your only task is to notice the sensation without acting to change it. Observe the stories your mind creates. This is unbearable, I need to fix this now, and then observe that the timer will ring, and you will have survived it unchanged. In that small space, you are not becoming indifferent to your well-being. You are becoming the calm commander of your own experience, building an endurance that has nothing to do with gritted teeth and everything to do with quiet understanding. You spill coffee on your shirt. Your first thought is that this is terrible, but what if you could catch that thought before it sets your mood for the next hour? That's the Stoic discipline of assent. It's that pause between something happening and your judgment about it, and voluntary discomfort is how you train for that pause. Epictetus said it, it's not things that disturb us but our judgments about things. The coffee spill is neutral. It's wet fabric, it's a stain. The judgment that it's terrible, that it ruins your morning, that's what creates the disturbance. The practice is to see that gap and to choose not to just agree with that first catastrophic story. When you pick a minor hardship on purpose, you're setting up a lab for your judgments. You create a small, controlled event. You turn off your GPS on a drive you know. You get in the slower line at the store. You leave your phone in another room. You'll feel that first flare of frustration each time, that internal protest. This is annoying. This is inefficient. The practice isn't to avoid that feeling. It's to observe it, to notice it as a judgment appearing in your mind, a judgment you can question. In that moment of observation, you use what the Stoics called rehearses. Your capacity for choice, your inner citadel. You see the thought and you can say, I see you. You are a judgment that this is bad, but is it truly bad or is it just inconvenient? Is it an obstacle or a chance to practice patience? By creating these small scenarios, you drain the power from the automatic story. You prove to yourself you can experience friction without a story of suffering. So a practical application for today. Create one small, intentional frustration. Maybe you decide to wash dishes without a podcast or music, just you and the task. Your mind will likely call it boring, a waste of time. Notice that label, that's the judgment. Then ask, is the activity itself harmful, or is my mind just complaining about no distraction? That simple act of noticing creates space where a new response can grow. Next time life gives you an unplanned frustration, a flat tire, some criticism, a missed deadline, try this. Before you react, take one breath, and in that breath silently label what's happening. That is a judgment, not a fact. This doesn't solve the practical problem. You still have to change the tire or address the feedback, but it changes how you approach it. You step out of the storm of your own reactions into a place of clearer agency. You're no longer a prisoner of the first thought in your head. You are its watcher, and in that watchful pause, you find a freedom no circumstance can take. Chosen hardship leads somewhere. It's not just enduring small challenges, it's coming to appreciate them. That's the final destination. The Stoics had a name for it. Amor Fati, a love of your fate. It's an attitude. It transforms every experience, especially the difficult ones you didn't choose, into fuel. It's not passive. It's an active embrace. Nietzsche took this idea. He made it his personal motto. He wrote that his formula for greatness was Amor Fati, the desire for nothing to be different. Not forward, not backward, not ever. Not just bearing what's necessary, but loving it. That echoes Marcus Aurelius. He reminded himself to accept the course of nature. To see an obstacle not as a disruption, but as the material for your practice. When you step into a cold shower, you're not just building tolerance, you're practicing a tiny act of Amor Fati. You reframe that shock of cold from an annoyance into an exercise in vitality. You're saying this sensation is here, and I will use it to feel more awake. More alive, more in command. You choose a simple meal. You reframe it from deprivation to an exercise in clarity and gratitude. you train your perception to find the gift hidden in the grit. That's the psychological shift. Voluntary discomfort is the rehearsal. So when life hands you an involuntary hardship, a failure, a loss, an illness, your mind doesn't default to victimhood. It's conditioned to ask a different question, not why is this happening to me, but what can this make of me? How can this become an opportunity to practice patience or courage or compassion? The event itself might be neutral or painful, but your relationship to it is yours to design. Think of a past difficulty, one that, looking back, made you stronger. A job you lost that led to a better path, a relationship that ended, teaching you about your needs, a period of loneliness that fostered self-reliance. In hindsight, we can see the necessity. The practice of Amor Fati is about bringing that hindsight into the present moment, to the minor, daily struggles. Can you look at the long line at the store not as stolen time, but as a chance to practice stillness? Can you see critical feedback not as an attack, but as raw material? To sculpt a better version of your work, this is the ultimate inoculation. You're not just building resilience against hardship, you're cultivating a mindset that welcomes all of life exactly as it comes. You train yourself to find the thread of usefulness in every experience. So here's a question. Can you identify one past difficulty that forged something valuable in your character? And how can you apply that same perspective of grateful curiosity to a current, minor inconvenience? See if you can reframe it just for today, not as a problem to be solved, but as your training ground. Our deepest fears are often in the eyes of other people. Stoicism tells us to walk toward that discomfort. It's maybe the strongest voluntary training there is, because it goes right to our primal wiring. We're social creatures built to belong. The threat of exclusion, of ridicule, of being judged poorly, it can feel viscerally dangerous, so we bend, we soften our opinions. We laugh at jokes we don't find funny. We buy things we can't afford just to keep up an image. We trade little pieces of our authenticity for a temporary safety in the group. And the Stoic practice is to consciously, kindly reclaim those pieces, to build a character so solid it doesn't crumble under another's gaze. This isn't about being abrasive or contrarian. It's about developing the courage to be genuine, even when it feels vulnerable. Seneca wrote about this. He advised his friend Lucilius to practice spending time alone. Not as loneliness, but as a test of self-sufficiency. He said you have to become your own friend first. When you're comfortable in your own company, you stop needing the constant validation of the crowd. You cease to be a slave to public opinion. Your worth is no longer something others vote on. It becomes an internal fact, and that independence is the foundation of real social courage. It lets you speak with honesty, not to shock, but because you value truth over approval. The practices are subtle, but they're transformative. They start with noticing where you automatically shrink. Maybe it's in a meeting where you have a contrary idea but stay silent because you don't want to rock the boat. The voluntary act is to raise your hand and say you have a different perspective. Or it could be embracing a comfortable silence in a conversation. Instead of rushing to fill it with nervous chatter, you practice being present, not performing. Another is sartorial, wearing something simple, functional, and truly you, even if it's out of step with the trend. You're practicing the statement that your value is not in your costume. Consider giving a sincere, specific compliment to a stranger. Not a flippant remark, but a genuine observation. It feels risky because it opens you up. You might be met with surprise or even suspicion. You're voluntarily entering a moment of potential social awkwardness to practice generosity, or asking that so-called dumb question in a class or workshop. The one everyone is wondering but no one wants to voice. You're trading the temporary comfort of blending in for the lasting gain of real understanding. Perhaps the most powerful practice is attending a social event alone, a lecture, a movie, a coffee shop, to sit with that initial feeling of exposure and to discover the world does not end. You observe your surroundings from a place of quiet curiosity, not from within the bubble of a familiar conversation. You build a relationship with your own experience, independent of a companion's reaction. So here's a reflective prompt. When did you last modify your behavior purely out of fear of others' judgment? Did you nod along to an opinion you disagreed with? Did you pretend to know about something you didn't to avoid looking foolish? Now, what would one small act of social courage look like for you in the coming week? It doesn't need to be a grand speech. It could be as simple as admitting you don't know the answer to a question, or choosing not to join in gossip. Each time you do this, you're inoculating yourself against the tyranny of what people might think. You're building a quiet, unshakable confidence that comes from knowing your actions align with your own principles, not the shifting winds of popular opinion. Imagine your life without the person or thing you value most, not in a morbid way but as a quiet experiment. The Stoics had a practice for this. They called it negative visualization. It's the deliberate act of thinking about the absence of what you have, not to dwell in sadness but to stir up a profound gratitude. It's the counterbalance. While premeditatio prepares you for hardship, negative visualization reveals the gift of your ordinary present moment. It shows you that your fundamental security, your core self, isn't actually tied to those comforts or people. And when you know that, choosing voluntary discomfort becomes easier. You're not giving up something essential. You're temporarily setting aside a wonderful bonus. Seneca put this starkly. He advised friends to periodically rehearse poverty, to tell themselves, this fortune I enjoy is not a permanent possession. It's a loan. By mentally giving it back, you transform your relationship to it. Wealth, comfort, companionship, they become beautiful additions, not the foundation. When you see them as gifts and not entitlements, the fear of losing them loosens. You inoculate yourself against the anxiety of loss by visiting that loss in your imagination, on your own terms, and returning safely. You prove you would still be you even then. Try a brief mental exercise. Think of one concrete blessing, the roof over your head, your physical health that lets you move freely. The sound of a specific loved one's voice. Now for 30 seconds, imagine it is gone. Picture the space where your home was empty. Feel the limitation of an illness you don't have. Hear the silence where that familiar laugh used to be. Don't rush. Let the feeling of absence land. Then bring your attention back. Notice what happens. The room feels more substantial. Your breath feels like a privilege. The memory of that voice feels like a treasure. The practice hasn't taken anything away. It has given everything back its true color, its preciousness, which familiarity had faded. This is why gratitude cultivated this way is so powerful. It's not a passive thanks, it's an active recognition of fragility and gift, and from that place, voluntary discomfort makes sense. When you choose a simple meal, you're not denying a pleasure. You're creating space to truly taste and appreciate food itself. When you take a cold shower, you're not punishing your body. You're waking up to the sensation of being alive in a body that can feel. The practice of having less becomes a way to love what you have more. So a simple ritual to close your day. Each night, as you reflect, mentally give back one good thing. The warm bed you're about to sleep in, the conversation with a friend, the cup of tea you enjoyed. In your mind, place it gently aside, as if returning a borrowed book. Acknowledge it was a temporary gift for this day. Feel the genuine gratitude for its presence, precisely because it isn't guaranteed. This small act does more than foster positivity. It builds a quiet confidence. You begin to carry your sense of security within you, not in the external things you can list. And from that inner abundance, you can walk into any discomfort, any challenge, knowing that whatever you have or don't have, you possess the one thing that can never be taken. Your capacity to find meaning and gratitude right where you are. The battlefield isn't always a physical place. It's the noise in your own head when everything gets loud. Navy SEAL go through deliberate chaos in their training, those hell weeks, to build a mind that works under extreme pressure. And the Stoic version of that is apatheia, which isn't apathy, it's freedom from the destructive passions, panic, rage, that kind of paralyzing frustration. The ones chaos can trigger. It's an inner citadel of peace, and you build it not by avoiding noise, but by walking into it sometimes on purpose. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, wrote his deepest reflections not in a quiet library, but in the clamor of the palace. In military camps, he trained himself to find a retreat inside his own mind, a place of stillness no external commotion could touch. That's the goal. Not to become numb, to become undisturbed, to let the chaos happen around you while your inner world stays clear, directed. You can design small, personal hell weeks for this. It's about bringing controlled, chaotic elements into your environment as a training ground for your focus. If you always work in perfect silence, try doing a session of focused writing in a busy cafe. The goal isn't to get more done there. It's to practice returning your attention again and again from the chatter and clatter back to your page. Each time you gently redirect your focus, you're strengthening that mental discipline. You're proving to yourself that your concentration isn't fragile, that it isn't broken by a coffee grinder or a passing conversation. Another method is to intentionally listen to music you find grating while doing a mundane task. Cleaning, organizing, don't fight the irritation, observe it, notice where in your body the tension rises, and then continue the task. You're not training your taste in music. You're training your capacity for equanimity in the presence of something you dislike. Consider turning off the noise cancelling on your headphones during a commute. Let the ambient sound of the train or traffic be there. Don't judge it as an intrusion. Treat it as the white noise of life and place your attention on your breath. On a single line of thought, or choose to run a routine errand at the absolute busiest time, Saturday afternoon at the grocery store. Go in with no goal but to practice patience. To move slowly, to not let the bustle of others dictate a sense of internal hurry. These are all voluntary exposures to mild chaos. They're inoculations against the stress of the unpredictable. So when your car breaks down on a noisy highway, or your home is filled with the cheerful chaos of family, your mind has a reference point. It knows from practice that it can locate a center of calm inside the storm. The external noise doesn't have to become internal noise. So here's a question to sit with. Where in your life do you instinctively seek perfect quiet, perfect control over your environment? Could you, just once this week, seek the gentle opposite? Not to punish yourself, but to train the most valuable skill, the ability to find your focus and your peace, no matter what is happening around you. The Stoics believed an empty stomach could lead to a fuller mind. This was voluntary fasting, but not for health or weight. It was a physical dialogue with desire. A way to prove your will was stronger than your appetite, to show you weren't a slave to the next craving. The goal was self-mastery, to break that automatic chain where a hunger sensation immediately triggers a search for food, often before the body even needs it. By inserting a pause, you create space for observation. You learn to separate the physical need for nourishment from the mental habit of seeking comfort. Musonius Rufus spoke on this. He said luxury makes the body weak and the soul feeble, but simple food, hard work, facing hardship, these strengthen both. He wasn't promoting austerity for its own sake. He was pointing to cause and effect. When we constantly gratify every bodily whim, we train the soul, our inner character, to be passive. To expect ease, to see discomfort as an enemy, but when we practice restraint, we train the soul in resilience, in command. We discover the pangs of hunger aren't commands. They're signals, and we get to choose how and when we respond. This is where mental clarity often emerges. In that fasted state, when the body isn't busy digesting, many people report a sharpness of thought. A stillness, the mental chatter that usually swirls around meals, what to eat, when to eat, how it will taste, it falls quiet. That freed up energy can be redirected into focus, into reflection, into the work that matters. It's a practical demonstration. Simplifying your physical inputs can simplify your mental landscape. A practical starting point is gentle, observational. You might begin with an intermittent fasting window. Finish dinner by 8 in the evening. Don't eat again until noon the next day. That's a manageable 16-hour period, and it includes sleep. The real practice happens in the final few hours, when your stomach signals it's time to eat, and you consciously choose to wait. Your task in that window isn't to white-knuckle through misery. It's to become a curious scientist of your own mind. Notice the hunger pangs. Are they sharp or dull? Do they come in waves? Observe the thoughts that arise, maybe a memory of a favorite food, or a justification to break the fast early. Just watch them pass by like clouds without grabbing onto them. You are proving a profound truth. You can feel a desire without being compelled to act on it. So here's a simple challenge. Next time you feel hungry ahead of your planned meal, pause. Observe the sensation without immediately satisfying it. What do you learn about your impulses? Do they feel like urgent needs or passing suggestions? In that small space between hunger and action, you might just meet the most disciplined and clear-minded version of yourself. How much of your life is just running on autopilot? And how much are you actually open to the unexpected? We build our days around schedules, to-do lists. It creates this illusion of control, which is comforting. But the Stoics saw the world differently. They talked about a universal reason, a logos, a natural order that unfolds with its own logic, and our rigid plans, they believed, are fragile. They're constantly at the mercy of that larger flow. Fighting that flow just brings frustration. Accepting it, that's where you find a deeper freedom. And this is where spontaneity comes in. It's a powerful form of voluntary discomfort, and it's often overlooked. It's the practice of intentionally loosening your grip on the plan, creating small openings for life to surprise you. And when you do that, you're not being irresponsible. You're training a muscle, the muscle of adaptability. You're inoculating yourself against the anxiety that comes when things don't go your way. Seneca wrote about this in his essay on the shortness of life. He argued life is long enough if you know how to use it, and part of that wise use is understanding that time isn't just for executing a checklist, it's for living. And to live fully means sometimes stepping off the predetermined path. When you cling too tightly to a schedule, any interruption feels like a theft. A traffic jam steals your time. A cancelled meeting wastes your afternoon. But if you cultivate a mindset that welcomes the unplanned, those interruptions transform. They become detours, not dead ends. They become opportunities for observation, for a different kind of engagement with the world you're usually rushing through. The practice starts with tiny releases of control. On your way home from work, take a different exit. Drive down a street you've never explored. Don't do it to save time. Do it to break the hypnotic rhythm of your routine. Notice the houses, the trees, the way the light falls differently. You're practicing the art of noticing. And in that noticing, you become present. Or in a coffee shop, if you feel a genuine impulse, offer a simple, kind word to the person next to you, not a grand speech. Just a comment on the book they're reading or the weather outside. You're voluntarily entering a moment of potential social awkwardness to practice connection over isolation. A more substantial practice is to block out an afternoon, or even just a single hour with no plan at all. The instruction is simple: be spontaneous. For many of us, this creates immediate discomfort. What will I do? Isn't this wasteful? That very anxiety is the target. You sit with the empty space. You might feel a pull to walk in the park, or to finally start that small creative project you've been putting off, or to simply sit and watch the clouds. The goal isn't to have a profoundly epic adventure. The goal is to listen to your own impulses without the filter of a productivity app, to remember you are a human being, not just a human doing. This practice of planned unplanning builds a critical resilience. When a real, unforeseen crisis hits, a sudden change at work, a family need that upends your week, your mind has a reference point. It knows from practice that deviating from the script isn't catastrophic. It's simply a different kind of page. You've trained your adaptability in low-stakes environments, so you can access it in high-stakes ones. You become like a tree that bends in the wind, rather than a rigid pole that snaps. So here's a direct prompt. This weekend, block out one single hour in your calendar. Label it only with these words: be spontaneous. When the time arrives, begin by taking 3 deep breaths. Then ask yourself one question: what feels like a small, curious step away from my normal routine right now? Follow that gentle nudge wherever it leads. You're not seeking a life-altering experience. You're conducting an experiment in trust in the moment. And trust in your own capacity to navigate it without a map. Stoic voluntary discomfort. It's not just about feeling cold. It's about choosing integrity over convenience. That's the discipline of action, where it moves from personal endurance into character. It asks you to do the harder right thing, especially when the easier, more comfortable option is right there. That's how you build moral muscle. The Stoics called these the virtues: courage, justice, wisdom, temperance. They saw them not as lofty ideals, but as muscles. Muscles to be exercised in daily life. Every time you choose the more virtuous but less comfortable path, you're performing a rep for your character. You're inoculating yourself against the far greater hardship of a weak or compromised spirit. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this constantly in his private writings. He would say you must do what is right for its own sake, not for praise, not for reward, but because it is in harmony with nature, because to act otherwise is to betray your own reason. Your own highest self. He wrote about doing the right thing even when no one will ever know. That is the ultimate test, when the only witness is your own conscience. That's where true strength is forged. Think of the small daily moments. You receive too much change from a cashier. The easier path is to pocket it, to tell yourself it's just a small amount, it's their mistake. The harder right thing is to hand it back. You're practicing the virtue of justice. You're training your mind to see honesty not as a cost, but as a non-negotiable standard. Or you're working on a tedious, detailed task. The easier path is to cut corners, to do a passable job that likely won't be noticed. The harder right thing is to do it thoroughly. With care, even if it takes longer, you're practicing the virtue of excellence, taking pride in your work for its own sake. Or perhaps you're in a conversation. A friend is being unfairly criticized in their absence. The easier, more socially comfortable path is to stay silent or to nod along. The harder right thing is to gently offer a different perspective. To stand up for their character, you're practicing the virtue of courage and loyalty. In each case, the discomfort is real. It might be the discomfort of losing a few dollars, of spending extra time, of facing potential social friction, but the gain is immeasurable. You are actively sculpting a person you can respect. So here is a simple practice for your nightly review. As you reflect on your day, ask yourself 2 questions. First, what was the harder right thing I could have done today? Where did I face a choice between convenience and character? And second, what stopped me? Was it fear, laziness, a desire for approval? Just by asking these questions, you bring awareness to these pivotal, quiet moments. You begin to see them as opportunities, not as burdens. And the next time a similar choice arises, you'll recognize it. You'll remember the person you're trying to build. And you might just find that choosing integrity, that voluntary moral discomfort, becomes its own profound source of strength, a quiet confidence that no external comfort can ever provide. History and myth are full of people who used hardship, They used it as a kind of forge to build a character that couldn't be shaken, and these aren't just stories. They're more like blueprints for a mindset, a way of thinking that turns any obstacle into a chance to grow. There's Socrates. He lived in poverty, but he considered himself richer than the wealthy men of Athens. His wealth was his wisdom, his ability to question everything, and his commitment to his principles, even when it meant facing condemnation from his own city. His trial and his choice to accept the sentence that was the ultimate demonstration. He proved his inner peace wasn't for sale. It couldn't be taken by any external verdict. Then Cato the Younger, the Roman senator, his personal austerity was legendary. This was an era of opulence, of corruption, and he wore simple clothing. Ate plain food, walked bareheaded in all weather. His contemporaries saw it as eccentric, but for Cato it was a living argument, a daily physical proof. That virtue and happiness didn't depend on material comfort or on popular opinion. He was inoculating himself against the fear of loss so that in the political arena his judgment would never be clouded. Not by a desire for personal gain, not by a desire for safety. Even mythological archetypes serve this purpose. The labors of Hercules, they weren't just feats of strength. They were trials of character. Each monstrous challenge was an invitation to cultivate courage, ingenuity, perseverance. The stories remind us, a meaningful life isn't a comfortable one. It's one where you confront the symbolic beasts, the ones within and around us, and you overcome them. A more radical example is Diogenes the Cynic. He lived in a large ceramic jar. He owned nothing but a cloak, a staff, and a wooden bowl, and then he saw a child drinking water from his hands, so he threw away his bowl. He realized he had possessed an unnecessary comfort. His extreme actions were a performance, a stark lesson. In distinguishing natural needs from artificial desires, he was demonstrating in the most visceral way that freedom is found not in acquiring things, but in realizing how little you truly need to be content. The point of studying these figures isn't to replicate their actions. You don't need to live in a tub or confront a literal lion. The takeaway is their mindset. Socrates faced social ridicule. He faced ultimate condemnation with calm reasoning. Can you face a difficult conversation at work where you might be misunderstood with that same commitment to clarity and principle? Cato practiced having less to fear less. Can you intentionally simplify one area of your life to reduce your anxiety about losing status or possessions? Hercules approached each labor as a task to be completed through resourcefulness. Can you view your next big project not as a burden, but as your current labor, your chance to build a specific strength? So here's a reflective prompt. Which historical exemplar's relationship with hardship resonates with you the most? Is it the serene integrity of Socrates, the disciplined austerity of Cato, the purposeful trials of Hercules, or the radical freedom of Diogenes? And more importantly, what single quality of theirs can you begin to emulate in a small, modern way this week? Perhaps it's their courage in social settings, their indifference to luxury, or their relentless focus on the task at hand. By choosing one quality to practice, you connect your own story to a much older, deeper tradition of building strength through voluntary challenge. We will die. That's the truth we spend our lives running from, and the Stoics, they suggest we walk with it instead. That's the practice Memento Mori, remembering death. It's the ultimate voluntary discomfort, not because it's frightening, but because it forces a clarity. A clarity that comfort obscures. To remember you're mortal isn't about dwelling in gloom. It's a tool, a sharp lens, one you deliberately hold up to your life. It strips away the trivial, it makes the precious things vivid, and it asks this urgent question: if your time is limited, what are you doing with it? Marcus Aurelius returned to this thought again and again in his private journal. He wrote of death as a natural process, as common as leaves falling in autumn. He reminded himself that even the most famous emperors are now dust and story. This wasn't a morbid fixation. It was a motivator. He used it to spur himself toward good action, toward justice, patience, duty. He wrote that you could leave life right now, and that you should let that determine what you do, what you say, what you think. The point is the immediacy, the reminder that postponing your best life, or that honest conversation, or your most meaningful work, that's a gamble, and you're gambling with a currency you can't replenish. Integrating this into daily life, it needs simple anchors, tangible ones. It's not about constant, heavy brooding. It's about gentle reminders, periodic ones that re-center you. Some people keep a symbolic object on their desk, a small stone from a walk, smooth and ancient, representing the passage of all things, or a replica of a skull. Not as a dark symbol, but as a quiet teacher. Its silent presence on the shelf asks, is what you're doing right now worthy of your one fleeting life? Others use a phrase, a morning mantra, I will die, but not today. That statement does two things. It acknowledges the inevitable, and that removes its shocking power. And it frames the day ahead as a gifted space, a canvas to act upon. You can practice it in moments of frustration. Stuck in traffic, fuming over a minor slight, ask yourself, will this matter in a year? Will it matter at the end? The pettiness often evaporates. It leaves room for a calmer perspective, a more generous one. Or when you're choosing between an easy distraction and a meaningful task, the remembrance can be the nudge. Time is the one resource you can't earn more of. How do you wish to spend this hour? So consider this prompt, one that turns the ancient practice into something personal. If you knew for certain that you had 1 year left in good health, what comfortable habit would you abandon first? What persistent fear would you stop people-pleasing? Would you finally start that creative project you've shelved? Would you speak your love more openly or mend that long-held grievance? Now consider, the only thing standing between you and that change is the illusion of unlimited time. Why not start now, not with the panic of a deadline, but with the focused clarity of someone who knows the value of their days? This is the final inoculation, perhaps the most profound one. By voluntarily remembering the end, you become fiercely alive to the present, beautifully alive to it. We've trained ourselves to expect satisfaction right away. A craving comes and there's an app for it. A question gets answered in half a second. Boredom gets solved by scrolling. That constant, frictionless gratification does something. It weakens our tolerance for frustration. It shrinks our capacity for effort towards something far off. The Stoics saw a version of this. They understood that contentment depends not on getting what we want quickly, but on mastering our desires. Epictetus put it plainly. Freedom is secured not by fulfilling desires, but by removing desire. That sounds extreme, but the core is practical. It's about not being a slave to every impulse. Delayed gratification is training for that. It's voluntary discomfort in a modern form. You create a small space between an impulse and its satisfaction. In that space, you build patience, you build resilience, you find you're in command. This isn't about denying joy. It's about choosing the timing. It's about proving that the wanting is often more intense, more disruptive than the actual having. When you delay a reward, you're doing two things. First, you're strengthening your tolerance for the mild frustration of waiting. You're inoculating yourself against larger frustrations life will hand you. A delayed flight, a slow project, a goal that takes years, these become more manageable because you've practiced patience. Second, you're creating an opportunity for clearer judgment. An impulse to buy something often fades after a day or two. What felt like a necessity reveals itself as a passing whim. By waiting, you let your wiser self catch up. So a simple practice is the 48-hour cart rule. When you want to buy something non-essential online, put it in your cart, then close the browser. Set a reminder for 2 days later. When you return, ask yourself questions. Do I still want this with the same intensity? Is this aligned with my deeper goals, or was it just a spark? You'll be surprised how often the answer shifts. The desire becomes an object of study, not a command. Another practice is to create intentional pauses in communication. When you get a message that triggers a strong reaction, annoyance, excitement, defensiveness, don't reply immediately. Set a timer for 30 minutes or until the next morning. Use that time to let the initial emotion pass, to consider your response from calm, not heat. You're not ignoring the person, you're honoring the conversation by bringing your considered self. Here's a challenge. Identify one thing you want right now. It could be an object, a dessert, a piece of tech, or the urge to share something online. Commit to waiting 1 full week for it. Don't deny it forever, just postpone the satisfaction for 7 days. Your task during that week is not to white-knuckle through misery, it's to observe. Observe what happens to your desire. Does it grow into an obsession? Does it quietly fade? Does it transform into a more nuanced appreciation? That week-long space is your laboratory. In it, you're not just waiting for a thing, you're building a more patient, more deliberate you, a freer you. The beliefs we hold most closely, they might actually be our biggest weaknesses. If we never test them, this is a kind of voluntary discomfort, but it's not about the body or your things. It goes further into the structure of your thinking. The Stoics, their pursuit of wisdom, it wasn't about gathering facts you already like. It was a hunt for truth, and that requires being willing to be wrong. To be unsettled, intellectual comfort, it's a trap, a seductive one. It leads to thinking that's brittle, dogmatic. A mind that's never been challenged turns rigid. It can shatter under the pressure of a single good argument, but a mind that goes looking for that friction, for cognitive friction, it gets stronger. More adaptable, more rational, it bends without breaking because it has practiced bending. That practice, it comes from the Socratic method. The Stoics admired this. Socrates didn't lecture, he questioned. He poked at assumptions, not to humiliate, but to find a deeper understanding. His famous line, "I know that I know nothing," that wasn't just admitting ignorance. It was an active curiosity, a declaration. He was always ready to have his beliefs taken apart if something better could be built there. That's the Stoic view of knowledge. Wisdom isn't something you own and guard. It's a process you go through, a process that needs the voluntary discomfort of doubt. So practicing this, it starts with a simple, deliberate action. Pick a topic you feel strongly about: politics, an economic theory, how to raise kids, a view of history. Then, find the single most intelligent case for the opposite view. Not the caricature, not the straw man argument from social media. Find the book, the long essay, the lecture by a respected thinker who actually holds that position. Your job isn't to read it looking for flaws. Your job is to read it to understand. How does this person see the world? What values shape their conclusion? Where is their logic, starting from their premises, actually sound? You don't have to change your mind. You have to stretch it, to hold two competing ideas at once and look at the tension between them. Another way is to ask a thoughtful friend to critique a belief you care about. Give them permission to be your Socrates for a moment, to ask you why you believe that. What evidence you have, what other explanations might exist, and then listen, really listen. The discomfort you feel, that's not a sign you're losing. It's a sign you're working a muscle that's been dormant, the muscle of intellectual humility. So here's a prompt. What's one belief you're absolutely sure about? It could be about success, relationships, how the world works. Now ask yourself, what's the strongest, most reasonable argument against it? If you can't articulate it, that's your signal. That's exactly where your intellectual comfort has made you vulnerable. Go find that argument, not to defeat it, but to understand it. In that act of seeking, you aren't weakening your conviction. You're either fortifying it with steel, or you're making room for a better one. Simple living isn't deprivation. It's about building a life so centered on the essentials that hardship just doesn't land the same way. It's a continuous practice, a lifestyle of chosen moderation, a systematic reduction in how much you depend on things outside yourself. When your life is full of comforts you've come to expect, every shift in fortune feels personal. A lost job threatens your whole lifestyle. A broken appliance becomes a crisis. A change in social plans can ruin your week, but a simple life is a resilient life. It has these built-in buffers because you've kept your needs modest. Life's inevitable downturns, they have less distance to fall. You've already proven to yourself through daily choice that you can be happy with less. Seneca wrote about this in his essay on the happy life. He argued the wise person is content with what they have, not what they wish for. Their happiness comes from internal sources, their character, their principles, their capacity for reason. External possessions are just temporary guests. That mindset shifts simplicity from a sacrifice into a source of security. You're no longer a hostage to your own lifestyle. This practice goes far beyond a single cold shower or a skipped meal. It's about architecting your daily environment to support focus, not distraction. To enable virtue, not vanity, take digital minimalism. It's not just deleting an app, it's the conscious curation of your attention, your most precious resource. You design your tech use to serve your deepest values, not to fragment your focus with endless notifications. Each time you choose a book over a scroll, or a focused work session over tab hopping, you're practicing that Stoic simplicity. You're declaring your mental clarity is more valuable than the dopamine hit of novelty. Look at the physical space around you, the philosophy of a capsule wardrobe owning fewer, higher quality items that all work together. It's a direct application. It removes the daily friction of choice, the anxiety of having nothing to wear. It trains you to find satisfaction in utility and elegance, not in endless accumulation. The one-in, one-out rule, that's another gentle discipline. For every new item that enters your home, one must leave. It forces a moment of conscious evaluation. Do I value this new thing more than what I already have? It prevents the silent creep of clutter, which is really just deferred decision-making, a visual weight on your mind. The space you create by removing the non-essential, it isn't empty. It gets filled with what matters, time for deep work, energy for meaningful conversation. The mental bandwidth to be truly present. You stop managing your possessions and start cultivating your life. So here's a reflective prompt, a practical audit you can begin today. Look around your living space. What are 3 items you own that serve comfort only, not virtue or necessity? Maybe a decorative object that gathers dust and requires cleaning. A kitchen gadget used once a year. An article of clothing kept for a hypothetical occasion that never arrives. Don't rush to throw them away, just identify them. Observe the story you tell yourself about why you keep them. Is it a story of just in case, or of a past identity, or a gift you feel obligated to hold onto? In that observation, you begin the practice of discernment. You start to see your environment not as a fixed reality, but as a collection of choices. And choices, as the Stoics taught, that's where your power truly lies. The practice of controlling your reactions to discomfort teaches you something deeper. It shows you how little you actually control. That's the paradox in Stoic training. You step into hardship willingly, not to master the world but to learn its boundaries. To see where your agency ends and where nature begins, or chance or other people's wills. That recognition isn't a defeat, it's the start of a real humility. A healthier relationship with life's uncertainty. Think about learning a new language or a musical instrument or a physical skill. You're volunteering for a cascade of small failures. You'll mispronounce words, you'll hit wrong notes, you'll fumble the movements. The voluntary discomfort is in persisting through that awkward phase. Not to become perfect, but to practice a kind of detachment. Your self-worth stays intact, separate from the clumsy results. you learn to judge yourself by your effort. By your courage to try, not by the immediate outcome. It shatters a modern illusion, the idea that we should be good at things immediately, that if we're not, it means there's a fundamental flaw. The practice rewires that. It teaches you to find dignity in the attempt itself. Epictetus's Dichotomy of Control comes back here. Our voluntary practice lies entirely in what's up to us. Our choice to begin, our commitment to show up, our attitude during the struggle. The results, how fast we learn, whether we win, how others judge us, that's the other column. That's not up to us. By placing ourselves in scenarios where we're guaranteed to fail by external standards, we strengthen our ability to hold that line. We inoculate ourselves against the crushing disappointment that comes from tying our whole identity to an outcome we can't control. You can design small labs for this daily. Pick up a complex board game or a strategy video game where you know you'll lose, especially at the start. Play with the sole intention of observing your own reactions to loss. Do you get frustrated? Do you make excuses? Or can you stay curious about the mechanics? Can you appreciate your opponent's skill? You're not practicing to win. You're practicing to lose with grace and to learn. That's the real skill being built. Another lab. Perform a routine task with your non-dominant hand. Brush your teeth, write a sentence, use your mouse. It will be slow. It will be messy. The goal isn't proficiency with your left hand. The goal is to sit with the frustration of your own temporary incompetence. And to continue calmly. You're proving to yourself that inefficiency is not a crisis. It's just a different, slower path to the same end. So here's a reflective prompt. For a situation you might be facing right now, what's one area where you're desperately attached to a specific outcome, a promotion, a person's affection? The success of a creative project. Try to perform this mental separation. Outline clearly what part is truly yours, your preparation, your honest effort, your integrity in the process. Then acknowledge what part is not yours, the final decision of a boss, the feelings of another person, the public's reception. By making this distinction vivid, you reclaim your energy, you pour it into the column you can influence, and you loosen your grip on the rest. This doesn't guarantee the result you want. It guarantees something better, your peace of mind, regardless of the result. Fear grows when you avoid it, and voluntary discomfort, that's the light you shine on it. It's not just about getting tougher in general. It's a tool, a precise one, for taking apart specific fears. In Stoic thinking, fear is a passion. It's a storm of emotion, but it's based on a judgment. The judgment is that something in the future will be a terrible evil, and that we're powerless against it. That judgment lives in our imagination, and it gets stronger every time we look away. But when you take a small step toward the thing you fear, a controlled step, you gather data, you test that catastrophic story against reality. Seneca had it right. He wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Voluntary discomfort is the experiment. It proves him right. You're not trying to conquer the fear all at once. Not in one grand gesture. You're systematically desensitizing your own mind. By exposing yourself to a manageable piece of the feared scenario, you correct the faulty judgment. You learn the reality is often less terrifying, and you are far more capable than your imagination allowed. Think of learning to swim. The fear of deep water is powerful if you only stand on the shore. The judgment is that the water is dangerous and you will sink, but you don't start by jumping into the ocean. You start by getting your feet wet. Then you wade in to your waist. Then you learn to float with support. Each step is a voluntary, manageable discomfort. It exposes the faulty parts of the initial fear. The water holds you up. You can breathe, you can move, the judgment shifts. It goes from "this is certain danger" to "this is a skill I am learning." The fear loses its power because you've illuminated it with direct experience. Take a fear of public speaking. The grand stage is the imagined terror. The voluntary discomfort isn't signing up for a keynote speech. It's choosing to ask a question at the end of a team meeting. It's offering a one-sentence opinion in a group conversation. The goal isn't eloquence. The goal is to feel the quickened heartbeat, the dry mouth, and to speak anyway. To prove to yourself that the social sky does not fall, that your voice can be heard and you survive the experience. Each tiny exposure rewires the neural pathway. It moves public speaking from the category of threat to the category of challenge. For a fear of rejection, the imagined evil is the sting of a no, and the story we attach to it that we are unworthy. The practice is to make a small, reasonable request where a no is a safe, acceptable outcome. Ask a colleague if you can shift a meeting time by 15 minutes. Inquire at a store if an item might go on sale next month. The possibility of a no is the point. You are voluntarily inviting that mild rejection to observe its actual effect. You'll likely find the no is just information, a logistical detail, not a verdict on your value. You inoculate yourself against the larger, more personal rejections life may bring. So here's a prompt. What's a shadow fear in your life, something minor that causes a disproportionate amount of anxiety or avoidance? It might be making a phone call to schedule an appointment, or returning an item to a store, or expressing a minor preference to a friend. Now, design a tiny, safe step to face it this week. Make the step so small that refusing to do it would feel more silly than brave. The action itself is almost irrelevant. The courage is in the decision to turn toward the shadow and to see what it's really made of. Can we really understand another person's hardship if we've never felt any of it? That question, it shifts Stoic practice from a private discipline into something social, a way to build empathy through chosen hardship when you voluntarily step into a state of lack, even briefly. You're not just inoculating yourself, you're building a bridge of felt understanding between your comfortable reality and someone else's difficult one. The Stoics called this oikoiosis. It's extending your circle of care from yourself to your family, to your community, ultimately to all of humanity. They saw humans as fundamentally connected, part of a single, rational community, and for that community to function with justice, its members need to understand one another. Not just intellectually, but viscerally. Theoretical empathy has limits. It's easy to say you understand someone's struggle when you're warm, fed, and secure. But to have felt a hint of their reality, that changes everything. It transforms pity, which can be distant, into genuine compassion, which is a form of shared feeling. This practice of voluntary discomfort becomes a tool for justice. It corrects the blindness that comfort can create. When you choose to go without a meal, you're not just practicing self-control. You're creating a living reference point. The next time you hear about food insecurity, your mind doesn't just process a statistic. It has a memory, a physical, quiet memory of what that hollow feeling is like. And that memory informs your compassion, makes it more authentic, more likely to translate into action. Consider practical applications, safe and intentional ones. Participating in a fundraising fast for a cause, linking your physical experience to a broader purpose, or on a cold night, turning the thermostat down a few degrees. Using only a blanket to sit with the sensation of chill safely, knowing you can end it anytime. That small, chosen friction can illuminate the constant, unchosen hardship of those without reliable shelter. Volunteering is another avenue, but with a shifted mindset. Instead of just showing up to help, you go with the intention of sharing for a time in the conditions of those you serve. Working in a community kitchen on your feet for hours, spending a day in a noisy, demanding environment that serves people in crisis. You're not there as a savior from another world. You're there as a temporary participant. That shared experience, however limited, builds a humility and connection, a connection that arm's length charity cannot. So, a reflective prompt. How might your perspective on a social issue you care about change if you voluntarily shared a fraction of the discomfort faced by those affected? If your concern is digital inequality, could you spend a weekend without your primary devices, using only a library computer for essential tasks? If it's the stress of low-wage work, could you take on a day of physically demanding labor in your own home or garden? The goal isn't to replicate the full weight of systemic hardship, which is impossible. The goal is to shatter the illusion of complete separation, to build a compassion that is grounded. Not in theory, but in a humble, bodily knowing. That knowing is the seed of a more just and connected world. The Stoics would begin and end their day with something harder than any physical test. They'd have a direct talk with themselves, a kind of voluntary discomfort for the mind, a quiet check on their own character. They called it the discipline of reflection. It comes in two parts: the morning meditation, the meditatio, and the evening review, the examen. Both take courage because they make you look at the gap. The space between who you want to be and who you actually were that day. That space can be hard to face, but that's also where growth happens. In the morning, you don't just plan your work. You prepare your character, you sit in the quiet for a minute, and you ask a simple question: what might test me today, and how can I meet it with virtue? You're not writing a to-do list for your tasks, you're writing one for your soul. You might see a hard conversation coming, so you set an intention: I'll listen more than I speak. I'll try to understand, not just to win. You know a tedious job is waiting, so you set an intention: I'll do it with care, not resentment. This morning practice is like a mental vaccine. You're facing possible frustrations before they occur. You're rehearsing the response you want to have, so when the situation arrives, your mind already has a path. A path based on principle, not just reaction. Then the evening comes. This is where the real voluntary discomfort is. Seneca wrote about his own nightly review in On Anger. He would ask himself directly: what bad habit did you cure today? What fault did you resist? How are you better? This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about forensic honesty. It's looking back at your day like a scientist studying data. Where did my actions match my morning intentions? Where did I drift? Was I led by passion or by principle? This means sitting with your own shortcomings, not to punish but to learn, to see the patterns. Maybe you notice you snapped at someone when you were tired. The review isn't to wallow, it's to see the trigger fatigue and to plan a better response for tomorrow. Or you might see a moment where you chose courage over comfort, and you can quietly acknowledge that. The practice balances correction with recognition. A simple structure helps. In the morning, take 3 minutes. Ask one question: what single virtue will I need most today? Patience, courage, temperance. Hold that word as you start your day. At night, take 5 minutes. Ask 2 questions. First, where did I live by my values? Note that. Second, where did I fall short and what can I learn? The goal is insight, not indictment. So here's a way to start tonight. Before sleep, take 5 minutes. Pick one interaction from your day: a talk with a coworker, a text, a moment with a child. Go through it slowly. Ask yourself, was my response coming from a passing feeling like annoyance or pride, or from a deeper principle? You don't have to judge the answer, just observe it. That act of observation, that voluntary turn toward your own imperfections, is the workout. It's how you build the muscle of self-awareness. And with that muscle, you stop being a passenger in your own life. You start to navigate it. You don't have to go climb a mountain. The way to an iron will is really just a lot of small, intentional no's. There's this idea in psychology called ego depletion, the thought that willpower is a limited resource, that it gets used up as the day goes on. But research points to something else too. Willpower can be strengthened like a muscle with regular, small exercises. It's not about big gestures of self-denial. It's about the micro-resistances. The almost invisible choices where you take command over an automatic impulse. Each one is like a rep for your discipline, and over time, those tiny victories don't drain you. They build a reservoir, a deep well of self-control you can draw from when a real storm comes. The Stoics understood this perfectly. They talked about practicing virtue in the smallest matters. Epictetus said it's impossible for someone to learn what they think they already know. If you believe checking your phone the second you wake up is just a harmless habit, you won't see it as training. But if you view it as a small chance to practice sovereignty over your attention, then everything shifts. The whole day becomes a series of these micro-opportunities. To align your actions with your principles, starting with the most ordinary moments, so think about the practical applications. They're everywhere. When your hand moves automatically toward your phone after a notification, you pause it mid-air. You take one breath before unlocking the screen. At a meal, you taste the food before reaching for the salt. You practice experiencing the flavor as it is. When you feel the urge to slouch in your chair, you gently straighten your spine, not just for posture, but as a physical declaration of alertness. When you're telling a story and feel the impulse to exaggerate a detail, you choose the plain truth instead. These acts seem trivial. They aren't. In each one, you're interrupting the autopilot of desire. You're creating a space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you exercise your rehearses, your faculty of choice. You're proving to yourself that you're not a servant to every passing whim. So here's a direct challenge. For the next hour, choose one micro-resistance, just one. It could be not taking a second cookie, or leaving a glass of water half full when you feel the impulse to finish it automatically. Or not interrupting someone while they're speaking. Your only task is to notice the feeling that comes up when you say no to that small impulse, that slight tension, that whisper of frustration or longing. That feeling isn't your enemy. It's the sensation of your willpower growing. Every object you own holds a piece of your attention. It holds a piece of your peace of mind. That's the hidden cost. We think we own our things, but in a quiet way, they own us. Each item becomes a point of potential anxiety, worry about theft, about damage, about losing it, about where to store it, about whether it's being used enough to justify the space it takes. The Stoics saw a direct link here between owning less and feeling less vulnerable to the whims of fortune. When you have fewer possessions, you have fewer hostages to fate. So voluntary simplicity isn't just an aesthetic, it's a proactive form of discomfort. The discomfort of letting go. You face the friction of releasing something you might, theoretically, need one day, and in doing that, you buy a future freedom. Freedom from that low-grade worry, the worry that clings to clutter. Epictetus said it. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. That's the core of it. Real wealth is a state of mind. It's the spaciousness that comes when your security isn't tied to an inventory, when your happiness isn't distributed across 100 fragile objects. Think of it as an inoculation. By choosing to own less, you inoculate yourself against the future hardship of loss. If you don't own a prized vase, you can't suffer the distress of it breaking. If your wardrobe is simple, a stain is a minor repair, not a catastrophe. You've reduced the number of targets misfortune can strike. This decluttering is a modern form of Stoic training. Training in non-attachment, not to become cold, but to place your primary attachments where they belong, in relationships, in character, in experiences that live in your memory, not on a shelf. There's a powerful thought experiment, the packing party. Imagine you had to move to a new city, and you could only take what fits in one suitcase, one single suitcase. What would you choose? The exercise forces a brutal clarity. It separates the essential from the incidental, the things that serve your life from the things your life serves. You don't have to actually move, but you can use that filter right now. Look at a crowded shelf and ask, would this make the cut for the one suitcase? If the answer is no, you've identified a potential burden. A starting point is even simpler. A single drawer, pick one, your junk drawer, your sock drawer. Empty it completely, then, as you return each item, hold it and ask, does this serve a clear purpose? Does it bring me genuine, regular joy? If the answer is no, thank it. And let it go. You're practicing the muscle of release. The discomfort is in the hesitation, in the voice that says, but I might need this someday. That voice is the anxiety you're training to overcome. By letting go anyway, you prove your well-being isn't dependent on that someday. So here's a question. What's one possession you cling to out of sentiment, or just in case, that actually burdens you? A gift you feel obligated to keep, a piece of outdated technology, a book you'll never read again. What would releasing it feel like? Not the moment of letting go, but the space that opens up afterward. The lightness, the quiet, that space is where your freedom grows. We often think of leisure as shutting down, but the Stoics saw it differently. They saw passive comfort as a kind of decay. Real leisure was active. It was a space for the soul to take on chosen challenges, to find refreshment through meaningful effort. This redefines voluntary discomfort. It's not just hardship, it can be a form of play that stretches you, that asks something of you and gives back a sense of aliveness. Passive consumption can't do that. Seneca wrote about this in On Leisure. He said the wise person is never idle, even in rest. For the philosopher, leisure isn't empty time, it's time for the cultivation of the mind. It's turning attention inward or toward understanding the world, free from urgent business. He wrote that we must combine leisure with activity, so the benefits of each can come to our aid. This active leisure is where we integrate learning, where we practice principles in a low-stakes environment. It's training disguised as enjoyment. Consider the modern contrast. On one side, binge watching a series, it's passive. The narrative flows over you. It requires little engagement. You might feel numb afterward, not refreshed. On the other side, reading difficult philosophy or dense history, it demands your focus. You wrestle with concepts, you reread paragraphs, you connect ideas. It's work, and yet finishing a challenging chapter can leave you energized, your perspective expanded. Or compare a lazy resort vacation, where every comfort is provided, to a hiking trip where you navigate a trail, you feel your muscles ache, and you earn a stunning view. Both are breaks from routine, but one engages your body and spirit in a dialogue. The other just changes the scenery of your passivity. This growth-oriented play is a profound form of voluntary discomfort. It's choosing the friction of learning over the smoothness of distraction. It could be learning a complex piece of music, embracing the frustration of wrong notes. It could be writing in a journal, not just logging events, but wrestling with a difficult emotion on the page. It could be a long conversation with a friend, exploring a topic without pressure for a conclusion. These activities are leisure, but they are not easy. They refresh by fulfilling a deeper need, the need for mastery, for understanding, for expression. So the practical application is a gentle pivot. Look at your upcoming week. Identify one block of time you'd normally use for passive consumption, maybe an hour scrolling on a weeknight or a lazy Sunday afternoon. Now schedule 1 hour of Stoic leisure in its place. Decide in advance what the activity will be, something active, challenging, deeply satisfying. It might be reading that book on your shelf, or attempting to sketch something from your window, or learning the basics of a new language, focusing solely on pronunciation for that hour. The key is intention. You are not punishing yourself, you are conducting an experiment. A different kind of rest. What would it feel like to end that hour not drained but curiously invigorated, to have created something, however small, or to have understood something that was opaque? That feeling is the reward for choosing depth over ease. It's the proof. Our souls are not refreshed by emptiness, but by engagement. The path to Stoic resilience is full of botched attempts. Awkward moments, glorious imperfections. We spend so much energy trying to look competent, trying to avoid the sting of being seen as a beginner, but you could turn that instinct on its head. You could seek out situations where you're almost guaranteed to fail, or at least to look foolish, not for humiliation, but as an experiment, a vital experiment. In separating your core worth from your temporary performance, this is voluntary discomfort in its most liberating form. It's training for the inevitable, larger failures life will hand you. By choosing small, manageable ones, you inoculate yourself against the shame, against the paralysis that comes with bigger setbacks. You learn something. Your character, your effort, your intention, these remain untarnished even when the outcome is messy. The Stoics had a term for this. They called outcomes like success or praise preferred indifference. It's natural to prefer them. They're nice to have, but they are not good in themselves. What is truly good is acting with virtue, with courage, wisdom, justice, self-discipline. If you attempt something difficult with the right intention and full effort, you have achieved the good. The result, win or loss, is secondary. It's indifferent to your moral worth. Epictetus drove this home. He asked, is a musician's worth found in their applause or in their practice? The practice, the dedication to the craft, is where the virtue lies. The applause is fickle, it's external. By seeking out imperfection, you practice this distinction in real time. You place your sense of self in the effort, not the trophy. So what does this look like? It means picking up a sketchpad, attempting to draw a human hand, knowing it will probably look like a misshapen potato. Your goal isn't a masterpiece. Your goal is to sit with the frustration of your skill not matching your vision, and to keep going. It's to laugh at the result and file it away as data, not as a verdict on your creativity. It means joining a casual sports league for a game you've never played. You will fumble. You will miss passes. Your teammates will be better. Your only objective is to be a cheerful, fully engaged beginner, to celebrate their skill while accepting your own clumsy learning curve. In that space, you practice sportsmanship. You practice humility, virtues far more valuable than points on a board. Or it could be as simple as ordering a meal in a new language with a native speaker. You will mispronounce, you might get a confused smile, but you will have communicated, and you will have practiced the courage of vulnerability. In each case, you are collecting evidence. Evidence that the world does not end when you are imperfect, that your value as a person is not on the line with every attempt. This evidence becomes a shield. For when you face a professional rejection, or a creative project that flops, or a personal misstep, you'll have a memory bank, a bank of smaller failures you not only survived but learned from. They become proof that you can endure the feeling and move forward with character intact. So here's a question. What's one thing you avoid because you're secretly afraid you'll be bad at it? Is it singing, even alone? Is it writing poetry? Is it dancing? Is it a technical skill like coding or woodworking? Could you grant yourself permission to try it this week? With a sole, non-negotiable goal of being a cheerful, utterly imperfect beginner. Don't do it to get good. Do it to get free from the tyranny of having to be good at everything right away. In that cheerful imperfection, you might find a deeper kind of mastery over your own self-judgment. Every cold shower, every fast, every hard conversation you choose to have, it's like you're making a deposit into this kind of psychological immune system. You're building a resilience bank account, and the currency you use is voluntary discomfort. At first, the transaction feels strange. You pay with a moment of ease, and you don't get any immediate reward, but the compound interest over time is a kind of unshakable calm, a deep confidence that you can handle whatever comes. That's the long view of Stoic practice. It turns hardship from a pointless ordeal into a strategic investment. In your future self, the short-term cost is clear. The chill of the water, the pang of hunger, the awkward silence after you speak your truth, it's a real payment, but the long-term dividend is what makes it wise. It's the ability to face a real crisis, a job loss, a health scare, a profound loss without your inner world collapsing. You've built up reserves, not of money, but of fortitude. You've proven to yourself in 100 small ways that discomfort is not an emergency. It's a manageable condition, so when a true emergency arrives, your mind doesn't panic. It draws from the balance you've built. It knows the drill. Seneca wrote about this forward-looking preparation. In his letters, he described how philosophy prepares us for the entire arc of life. For old age, by teaching us to find value in wisdom, not just physical vigor. For loss, by training us to hold our attachments lightly. For illness, by helping us separate the suffering of the body from the suffering we add with our own fearful thoughts. He argued we have to build our resources in advance. We stockpile wisdom, courage, temperance before we need them, so when hardship arrives, we aren't starting from zero. We're drawing from a well we spent years digging. Think of it like physical training. No single workout makes you an athlete. You might leave the gym feeling tired, even weaker. But that session is a deposit. It's a small stressor that signals your body to adapt, to grow stronger, to build endurance. The transformation is invisible day to day. But over months and years, the cumulative effect is profound. You are not the same person. The same is true for your mind. Each act of chosen difficulty is a rep. For your patience, for your courage, for your focus, you're not just getting through a cold shower, you're thickening your mental armor, one microscopic layer at a time. So consider a past hardship, a time of real stress or sadness. How would you have moved through that if you'd been making these psychological deposits for years? If you'd already practiced sitting with intense emotion without being swept away? If you'd trained your body to know physical discomfort is survivable? If you'd rehearsed loss in your imagination so the real event, while deeply painful, didn't carry the extra shock of the utterly unknown, you likely would have had the same feelings. Grief, fear, frustration, but you might have also had a steady undercurrent, a knowledge bone deep that you had the tools to endure, that you'd faced versions of this before in your training and you'd come out the other side. That's the dividend. It's not the absence of pain, it's the presence of an unbreakable core. Stoicism is about living well in the world. It's not about withdrawing from it. That's the distinction. The goal of voluntary discomfort isn't to punish yourself. It's not to prove a point through suffering. The goal is to build strength, so you can better fulfill your roles as a friend, a family member, a colleague, a citizen. The Stoics had this ideal, the philosopher in the marketplace. You train your mind in private, so you can act with greater wisdom in public, with greater compassion. Their practice serves engagement, not escape, so every act of chosen hardship has to pass through a filter. A filter of wisdom. Is this making me stronger, or is it just making me miserable? Is it building resilience I can use, or is it depleting the energy I need for my real duties? The practice has to be mindful, never reckless. It's a means to an end, and that end is a life lived with virtue, with purpose. Consider the practical balance. Fasting is a powerful tool. It's for practicing mastery over appetite. But if you take it to an extreme, it impairs your health. It impairs your ability to think clearly. And that contradicts the Stoic pursuit of wisdom. Your practice shouldn't make you a worse partner, a worse parent, a worse professional. A cold shower can build mental fortitude. But plunging into icy water without acclimation, without regard for safety, that's not courage, that's foolishness. The Stoic virtue is courage, but courage tempered by wisdom. Not blind risk. Choosing social discomfort by speaking your truth is vital. But if your manner is unkind, if it's needlessly abrasive, then you're practicing pride, not integrity. The aim is to be genuine, not to inflict discomfort on others. The line is drawn at your core duties, at your fundamental health. If your practice of voluntary hardship causes you to neglect a sick family member or to perform poorly at work that supports your community, then you've missed the point entirely. You're using a tool designed for building a better life, and instead you're using it to dismantle the very life you're meant to be improving. So there's a necessary question. In your pursuit of resilience, are you neglecting a core duty? Are you neglecting your fundamental health? How can your practice be adjusted? Adjusted to serve your life, not detract from it. Perhaps it means ensuring your fasts are nourishing when you break them. Maybe it means your digital Sabbath includes being fully present with your children. Not just isolated in a room, the practice is meant to inoculate you against life's storms, not to become the storm itself. Theory is one thing, practice is something else. It changes you, so we start with a week, not to change everything at once. That doesn't work. You burn out. You start small with intention, and you watch what happens. You work in 3 areas: the physical, the social, the cognitive, that builds resilience in layers. You begin with challenges that are almost too easy. The point isn't to endure something huge, it's the choice to begin, and then to watch what happens inside you. You're not tracking achievements, you're gathering data. On your own mind, on your automatic reactions, that turns it from a test of will into an experiment. In self-knowledge, think of it as a starter kit. You can mix and match. The only rule is to pick one thing each day and do it with full awareness. Here's a simple 7-day plan. You can follow it. Or use it to design your own. Day 1. End your morning shower with 30 seconds of cold water. The task isn't to tough it out, it's to feel the shock. To notice your breath catch and to watch the sensation as it changes. You prove to yourself that a stark physical feeling is just a feeling. It passes. Day 2. Skip a habitual snack, that afternoon cookie, the handful of chips after dinner. Feel the mild hunger, the craving. Watch the thoughts that come up. Boredom may be a sense of entitlement. See them as mental events, not commands. Day 3. Start one honest, slightly vulnerable conversation. Thank a colleague for their help and mean it. Tell a friend you appreciated their advice. Admit a small mistake without a long excuse. The discomfort is in moving from automatic politeness to something real. Day 4. A 2-hour digital detox. 2 hours in the evening with no screens, no scrolling, no streaming. Leave your phone in another room. The itch to check it will come. That itch is the muscle you're exercising. The muscle of directing your own attention instead of having it taken. Day 5. Cognitive friction. Learn one solid argument against a view you hold. Find an article or a short video from a thoughtful source you disagree with. Listen not to rebut but to understand. The goal is to stretch your mind, not to change it. Day 6. Declutter one single shelf, a bookshelf, a kitchen shelf. Empty it. Handle each item. Ask if it serves a purpose or brings you joy. Let go of at least 3 things. Feel the slight resistance to letting them go. Then feel the lightness of the space you make. Day 7. Morning and evening reflection. In the morning, 2 minutes. Ask what might challenge my character today. Set one intention, like patience. In the evening, 3 minutes. Review. Where did I live by my intention? Where did I drift? Do this without judging yourself, like a scientist reviewing notes. This framework is a beginning, not a prescription. Epictetus had a line for this. He said, if you wish to be a writer, write. If you wish to be a reader, read. And if you wish to make progress, begin. Begin where you are with what you have. So here's your first choice. Look over this outline. Choose just one practice from the list to start with tomorrow. Don't try to do all 7. Choose the one that creates a slight, manageable tension just thinking about it. That's your starting line. Commit to that single act. Consistency, not intensity. One small, chosen discomfort, observed with curiosity. That's how you lay the first stone. For the path to an unshakable mind, That journey started with a simple idea. It was unsettling. Our comfort might be weakening us, but we have a map now. A way to train on purpose, to build the resilience we look at and admire. We went through the principles, from that first shock of cold water to the deeper, quieter disciplines for the mind. We saw how voluntary discomfort works. It works across every layer, in the body through fasting or cold, in our social world through being honest when it's hard, in our thinking by challenging what we believe, and in our character by choosing the harder right thing instead of the easy wrong. Each practice does the same Stoic thing. It inoculates the mind. It builds an inner citadel, one so strong that life's storms outside can't break through. That's the real goal, not avoiding hardship, but making it powerless against our peace. We separate what's up to us from what isn't. We learn to love our fate, to see every obstacle as fuel. We pursue wisdom, not as a collection of facts, but as a way of being in the world. It all comes down to one shift, a transformative one. We stop seeing discomfort as a threat, something to avoid. We start seeing it as the material, the chosen material for our own forging. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He was writing to himself in the middle of war and political turmoil. He captured it. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's the essence of the whole practice. The cold water that stands in your way, it becomes the way to mental toughness. The difficult conversation becomes the way to authentic connection. The failure becomes the way to wisdom. Your mind holds this power, an alchemical power, to turn any hardship, any friction, into forward motion. So I'd invite you to see your next moment of friction differently. The long line, the critical feedback, the minor inconvenience, see it not as an interruption to your comfort, but as an invitation to practice. To build a little more of that unshakable core. The path is built one choice at a time, one intentional choice. Which practice will you begin with? Share your first step in the comments. Let's build a community learning to find strength in the struggle. And if you're ready for more guides for living with this ancient wisdom, consider subscribing. The journey to a resilient mind is lifelong, and we're just getting started.